Hey everybody, Kyle here with PriceLabs. As you know, I'm a senior solutions consultant with our team, and I'm super happy today to be joined by Katie Lyon, one of the partners over at Furnish Finders. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit about how these people in short-term rentals can switch it over to midterm rentals, how they can utilize Furnish Finder to help their revenue game. Katie, it's a pleasure to have you here today. If you don't mind, I've done a little introduction, but let's get a little bit of background for the audience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Katie Lyon. I am the marketing director at Furnished Finder, and I am actually a midterm rental landlord myself as well. So, since starting work at Furnished Finder, my family and I have gotten ourselves up to 13 midterm rentals. We have 13 midterm, one long term. We've done a little bit of short term sprinkled in here and there, mostly with a hybrid strategy with the midterms. But we have really come to love the strategy and love learning more and more. So I get to literally live and breathe it every day at work and in our own investment strategy. So yeah, it's really great. I've gotten to see Furnish Finder grow and change and develop, and I love being a part of all the new features we're making and just watching it expand and everybody realize the true potential that's there.
It's really interesting. It's summertime right now, so we're a little bit slower here in the sales cycle. I was at the pool a few days ago, and I was sitting there talking to somebody, and they're asking what I did, and I said, I'm PriceLabs. I work in short-term rental space. And he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, we've got 3 properties on Furnish Finder. You ever heard of them?" And it was like, you know what? I'm actually getting ready to start doing some
Actually,
podcasts with them. It's kind of cool. So it's so
that's
interesting, though.
awesome.
It really is. It's you all have a great reputation. Everybody that I've talked to is super impressed with it, whether it's the host side or the actual customer side as well. So kudos to that
Thank you.
with Furnish Finder. Absolutely. So today, a couple of the takeaways we want to give you all is we want to figure out, how can you smooth out your cash flow a little bit and generate steady income? We want you to be able to avoid some of those fluctuations with seasonal demand. That's one of the key things in midterm rentals. One thing I would also really, really like to cover today is, you mentioned it a second ago, Katie, is that hybrid model. How you use STR and MTR approaches together, and kind of when's the best time to use those. Ultimately, you want to optimize your occupancy, want to reduce turnover, on those days that you're not necessarily going to make super high ADRs. Midterm rental is the best way to go, in my opinion. So let's go ahead, and if you don't mind, let's just kind of start talking about your background as an owner with MTRs. What is it that kind of drew you to that philosophy? And if you don't mind, tell a little bit about the markets that you're in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my previous jobs, and just kind of the history of my career, I actually worked in commercial real estate, private equity, commercial real estate, private placement. So I definitely understood the power of real estate. I understood how, the tax benefits, the equity gains, the fact that you're having these tenants who are paying down, what you owe, and just kind of the financial and the wealth creation from real estate, right? But commercial real estate, just not really my jam. It's not that attainable as an individual, and it's a whole different beast. So I knew, and my husband and my family and I, we knew we wanted to do something in real estate, right? We wanted to get into it. So we were actually working on purchasing our first property right as I was transitioning my career into working at Furnish Finder. And we acquired that property as a short-term rental was our initial goal with it. This was one in Southwest Florida. We felt really good about it. The numbers were panning out fantastic. Then we had a little bit of a shakeup with the pandemic and supply chain. Getting furnishings was no longer very simple. It was very complicated. So right as I was beginning to work at Furnish Finder, I was starting to think, well, what else can we do with properties? What else can we do? What other options do we have? And it was like, this was right in front of me. It was right here. Like I was working in it 9 to 5 every single day. And
Yep.
it started to just make sense. It was like, okay, this is a lot more stable. This is a lot less turnovers. This is a lot less seasonality, like you said. So still understanding and appreciating the perks of a short term, because that's what we had initially gotten into that property for. But then really on the backside, starting to understand and appreciate the benefits that come with midterm. So we kept that one property as it is, and then I'm in Denver, which is a pretty expensive market, but my family is all in the Midwest, and we decided to do this kind of as a family business. And we said, well, what if we try this midterm thing? Let's give it a shot. So we arbitraged a studio apartment in Iowa. Like literally we dipped our toe into the water the smallest way we could. I think we paid like $750 a month in our rent. And we still have that apartment on arbitrage today because it's just an outstanding performer. So we went through the process. We furnished it. We listed it on Furnished Finder. We figured out the pricing. Found our tenants, and it became successful. So we've since kept expanding our portfolio. We have 13 midterms. We have one in Denver. The other 12 are in Iowa, kind of scattered all over, and we're looking towards more of the Midwest. And then we still have that one rental that I mentioned at the beginning in Southwest Florida that has just kind of always stayed a long-term rental since the furnishing never quite worked out with it. But we've just learned so much. Like we've learned how to make it work in different markets, right? Like I said, we have the one out here that's a totally different market, and that's a larger property. And we've learned so much along the way. So it's like I've seen our portfolio grow. I've seen our, team at Furnish Finder grow, and it's kind of been this just like coexistence that's been really beneficial. But the midterm rentals it's made it possible for me to do that with my family while we all have jobs. We all have families. We all have these other priorities and obligations that it's made it really doable.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the benefits of doing this MTR strategy. What do you think some of the benefits are? And is there any that you see as compared to the STRs? What do you think are those main benefits there?
Yeah. I mean, what comes to mind first is the workload, right? Like you're not turning over twice a week, once a week, 3 times a month even. On average, you're going to turn it over every 3 months. The needs of the tenants or the guests are also incredibly different. Typically when I get our tenants, we call them tenants because they're in there for a longer stay, but even if you call them your guests, once you get them settled in, past the first couple of days, you don't really hear from them much, right? You might hear from them if you have an air conditioner that's broken or a refrigerator that's broken or something like that, but you're not going to hear from them very much. And the wear and tear on your properties is so incredibly different as well. Like it's not, you're not going through these supplies so quickly. You're not going through, I don't know, when we have used our properties as short terms, because like I said, we've filled in the gaps, and we can talk about the hybrid strategy later, but like when we have done it, the wear and tear is it's really high. And it feels also stressful, right? Like the short-term rentals. And I feel like I have a little bit of a low barrier, but like it feels stressful, right? Because I'm like, okay, they're there for 4 days. I need to make sure it goes perfect. I want to get the perfect review. I want to make sure this doesn't tank anything. I want to make sure that like they're in good, nothing happens, they get out good. Then I got to get the cleaner back there. I got to get another person in there. It all just feels very high stakes, very it's a lot of everything, right? And it's a lot of revenue too. Like you definitely make more, 100%. You're going to make way more money, way more cash flow. But with midterms, you're still making far more than long-term. And it's just that the needs of that strategy are so much less.
Yeah. Would you feel safe in saying that the MTR strategy is a little bit safer than going short term? And what I'm thinking is, for a lot of our listeners, some of them shouldn't say a lot, or some of them, a lot of our listeners are working another job while they are doing this also.
Yeah.
Do you think MTR is just something that they should look into if they're very time sensitive and not necessarily just trying to cap it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I mean, the stability that it can give you, like I said, you're going to get a tenant in there. I've had a midterm tenant stay for over a year, which I know is most people would call long-term, but they just kept extending, and they were on a work contract. Yeah. So they just kept extending. I mean, we have 3 properties. or I'm sorry, 13 properties. I'm working full time. My husband helps with the management, but he works, about 30 hours a week at a different obligation.
Mhm.
There's no way we could do that with short term unless we had some sort of a property manager that we were doing a revenue share with, and then we'd kind of be right back to where we were with midterms, right?
Mhm.
It really it is a much more conservative way to do it. You don't have to stress about that calendar. I get someone in and typically, my calendar's booked for 3 months, 6 months. And then it's kind of like, cool, I'll think about this property again next quarter, right? Instead of in 4 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other side of it too, anybody that's listening to this that has long-term units where you're trying to get those 12-month type contracts, going from 12 to 3 can be very beneficial because like that example that you just gave, Katie, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, if they're extending, you always have an opportunity to keep your rates active to, what market is dictating. So
Yep.
if they're booked up for 3 months and then all of a sudden 6 months from now, you see this huge spike, you still have time to kind of capitalize on that. Not saying,
Yeah.
gouge or penny pinch either way, but you have the ability to kind of adjust a little bit.
Yeah.
So I do have a quick question for you. With you having properties kind of all over the place, you have some in Denver, you've got one in Florida, you've got a bunch in Iowa. What do you see the impact of the location of those properties? And then where do you think an ideal type of a person, or if a person were to get on Furnish Finder and try out this midterm strategy, where do you think some
Yeah.
ideal locations for those types of properties are? And what I'm getting at is like schools and hospitals and things like that, not necessarily
Yep.
cities or anything.
Yep. Yeah. It's really, you wouldn't think that properties in Iowa would do well. I mean, it's not, you're not going to go to Iowa for fun. You're not going to say, oh, I'm going on a 2-week vacation and I'm going to go to the middle of Iowa, right? Like it's not a short-term rental hot market. But with midterm rentals, these tenants are looking for a need and not a want. They're looking because they're on a contract, whether they're a healthcare worker or a contractor or someone coming in to develop a new data center, or a family who's relocating, right? Maybe they sold their house and they're waiting for their new house to be done being built. The needs are really diverse, but they are needs. They're not necessarily wants, right? I mean, there are some people who say, it's a pair of grandparents. They want to go live next to or spend the summer next to their grandkids, right? But that's still, they need a place to live. They're not looking for a vacation. So you do not need a typical vacation market, but you're still going to be able to make on average, at least 2 times long-term rent. We have several properties that are arbitrage where we rent them out and furnish them and then re-rent them as midterms. And we charge at least 2 times what we're paying in rent for every single one. Now you have to remember that you're taking in utilities, lawn care, things like that. But the revenue is substantially more than long term, right? And you have that consistency. You're not going to have all those breaks in occupancy like you would with short term. So it's going to even out a lot more, and just you're going to be on the consistency play. As
Mhm.
far as markets go, it's really dependent on who you are targeting as your tenants. We have a lot of our top markets that you wouldn't expect. Um, Denver is a great market. San Diego is a hot market. There's all sorts of them. But what I typically tell, because I get this question so much at conferences and talking to investors, like, where should I go?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, where do you see a need? Right? Because I can tell you a teeny tiny town in Iowa that I'm looking at right now that's building 2 data centers that I guarantee 99.9% of the people listening have never even heard of.
Yep.
But then there's also great big cities, right? It's more, what need are you fulfilling, right? Is there a big healthcare surge there? Are there new, like I said, new data centers being built? Is there, a lot of relocation in this area? Is there a housing shortage? So people, maybe buyers or, people, families who are moving around there sell their house and it takes them a few months to find their next house. So they need a temporary stay. We do have a stats page. It's furnishedfinder.com/stats. And that can give you a lot of market insights. I know everybody loves data. This is like my favorite tab to always have open in my Chrome, because
Absolutely.
it'll give you, like, you can look at the ratio of how many properties there are and how many page views. You can look at like average page views per property. I like to look somewhere when I'm analyzing a new market, somewhere around, 200 and up is a good benchmark. But I've seen markets where it's lower, and I've talked to people there where it's doing great. The nice thing is that especially if you have a short-term rental already, it's an incredibly low barrier to entry, right? All you have to have is a listing and an open calendar, and then
Yep.
like you're essentially ready to take a midterm tenant.
Yeah. So let's step away a little bit from necessarily your experience, and let's talk about the Furnish Finder experience a little
Yeah.
bit. So if somebody is not doing midterm right now and they want to hop on the Furnish Finder, what are some of the, I don't want to say selling points or anything like that, but what are some of the protective measures that you have in so that people can go in and confidently use it? And the reason I ask that is because when we spoke last week or the week before, there was a lot of, contractual things. There's a lot of there's just a lot of protection, it seemed like, for the host at that time.
Yeah, one thing that we do differently at Furnished Finder that I think is really, not only is it unique, but it is empowering, is we give the control to the landlord and the traveler. Okay, so we don't take a booking fee, we don't take a commission. So that means truly what matters most is that it is a great partnership between you and the traveler. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We want everybody to feel amazing about it. So we connect you, we give you unlimited leads. You're going to be able to get direct messages. Travelers can even like get your phone number and just text you or call you. Like, we're not worried about, oh no, you sent a message with your phone number in it. You're not allowed to do that. I'm blocking your message. It's just please connect, make sure it's a fit. We have tenant screening tools. We've partnered with TransUnion on, so you can require a tenant screening, which we really highly recommend, just so that everybody's on the same page. It has a background check, a credit check, an eviction history if there is one. And then you're going to go in and you're going to make a lease, right? Like, you're going to make a legally binding document. And we have partnered with Rocket Lawyer on that. So you can make a state specific lease and you can customize it, right? So if you have specific house rules or if you have pet rules or whatever it is, you can go in there and you can customize it. And those are just two of the things we have. We have a full suite of tools and partners that we've worked with. And the goal is that like you as the landlord are in control, right? It's your property. You own it. You should be the one who's making these decisions, but you should have that protection, everything from making sure you have the right property insurance to if you want additional damage waivers. And really, like, the two at like the core of everything are those tenant screening and having those lease docs, which is just like a core part of this midterm process. And sometimes people coming from short term are a little thrown off, right? Because it's like, you're not just going to like get the dopamine hit of, oh, I have a booking, right? It takes a little bit more involvement, but it's because you get to have more control in it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and that was exactly what I was talking about. Unfortunately, I'm more of the STR kind of guy. I'm still kind of novice with learning the MTR terminology myself, but I was so blown away looking at it and the data that you give people to look at. If you're getting into midterm rentals and you don't know how to go about your pricing strategy, it's really simple to kind of look at Furnish Finder and be able to identify, hey, where those opportunities lie for you. Talking about the pricing strategy, what do you recommend, both personally as an MTR owner and operator and with Furnish Finder? How do you suggest people approach their rates and their minimum stays and all of that stuff from your perspective?
I think if you're coming from a short-term world, you're used to dynamic pricing and probably thinking about pricing a lot more than we do in the midterm world, which is great because it's going to be a little bit of a sigh of relief. You're going to feel like, oh, this is a lot more simple than I anticipated. We really suggest taking a look at that market insights page, that stats page that I mentioned. It's also linked on the header of our website in the general nav. But then looking at comps, right? Trying to find properties as similar to yours as you can, similar bed, similar bath, similar location, finishes, amenities, as close as you can. And then taking a look and saying, is there anything that makes my property more or less valuable? Like, do you allow pets when most other properties don't? Do you have a garage? Others don't. Do you have a fenced yard? Others don't, or vice versa. And then we suggest, hop on PriceLabs. You guys have that filter for 30 days or more, and that can give you a lot of great insights, especially when you're just pulling in more data. Everybody in the STR world is so comfortable with data. It's really refreshing, and it's empowering. But I always encourage people, like, don't overthink it. You can tweak things. You can tweak things as much as you want. Like you said, you can change your pricing like in between tenants, in between renewals if you want, as long as it's fair and, not absurd. But even things like the cleaning fees, looking at the average, and PriceLabs will pull that if I'm correct, right?
Yes. Yep. As long as it's on certain websites, we can't pull it directly from Furnish Finder, but maybe eventually we're going to get there.
Yeah, let's get there. But no, it's like a balance of like data and then just insights and experimenting and observing. And a lot of times people think, they're not getting the results, and the pricing is not the problem. It might be your photos, or it might be your availability or something, right? If you don't have availability for 30 days, it's going to be really hard to book for 30 days.
Yep.
But yeah, it's going to be pretty simplistic for people coming from the short-term world, which should feel pretty dang refreshing.
I really agree with that too. It's not simplifying it in a negative way. It is very much, hey, you don't have to put as much emphasis on certain things. So in the short-term rental space, if you get a huge event that comes into your market, there's a good chance that can pull, 2 or 3 or 4% of your total revenue. Those types of events don't impact quite the same for midterm rentals. They do, but not. You don't have somebody coming and saying, I'm going to stay 30 days because there's a Taylor Swift concert for 2 days.
Right.
You're dealing with a lot more of the professionals, and then the contracts was a huge thing you talked about. And I don't want this to go super, super long or anything, but I think it's important for listeners that may want to move from short-term or at least test that midterm rental.
Yeah.
I personally have always been really kind of excited about that, building relationships, getting contracts over and over and over. And that's hard to do in short terms. How would you suggest people go about approaching that? And you also mentioned, you have leads kind of already built into the Furnish Finder as well.
Yeah.
How would you, let me step back. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to start trying to target those hospitals or target, government contracts or contractors, so to speak?
Yeah. I think the number one step, and this is going to sound very self-promotional, and I don't mean it in that way at all, but is to have an outstanding Furnish Finder listing.
Agreed.
I have heard so many times, even recently, okay, I have my Furnish Finder listing up. Really, it's fantastic. It's great. Now, where else do I post so that I can get in touch with hospitals or government contracts or this or this? And it's like, we've done that, right?
We're already doing it for them.
We right. Like you need to make your listing fantastic. We will be your billboard. And like your practices, right? Like if we give you leads, are you responding? Are you responding thoroughly? Are you responding thoughtfully? Are you moving through that booking process of tenant screening and then lease and then a damage waiver, right? Like, and we queue you on all of those, and we have so much education and content on our site and our platform for users, because we know that a lot of times it's a new process, right? Entering into this midterm can feel very fresh, but it's something that like we can give to you kind of step by step. It's not overly complicated. The most important thing is truly to put your best foot forward and to be active, right? To make sure that you're getting in those leads, and even if it's a lead that's not going to work out, I will still reply to them and say, hey, if you're a travel nurse, if you extend or you decide to stay longer and you need a new place, keep mine in mind, right? It's those relationships. It's much less transactional than short term and much more relationships. And sometimes that's just, what do you say? How are you replying? How are you taking that hospitality to a relationship level?
And that's actually, I think, a lesson that anybody, regardless of what you do in life, that's a lesson that we should all be taking from that. So,
Yeah.
So what do you think about seasonality wise, when is the best time for somebody to test potentially going to an MTR? Like if you were to say, hey, I'm getting into my slower season, what type of prep work do you think should be done? Is it something that they should be looking at 3 months in advance, or
Yeah.
Pull the cord and start giving it a try right away?
I would be posting your listing at least 3 months in advance. If you know, hey, my slow season starts in September, right? I would be posting it at least in June. Our average book to stay window is about 30 days, but there are people that book further in advance, especially in some of these seasonal markets. Um, and it's much easier if you know your calendar availability. You want to start taking midterms in September. There's no harm in trying to list it earlier and getting some of those people who are planning a little bit more in advance. The other thing I can give you is you can just start to observe some things, right? You'll start to see these leads come in and you can pick up, oh, a lot of these people have pets, or, oh, a lot of these people are working here or here. And you can get to know those factors around your market that you might not know unless you're like in the game, right? Like you're in it and you're starting to learn and develop, and it just gives you some time to kind of get your footing. I would say at least 3 months. Midterm rentals sometimes take some patience. So it's not like you're going to list your property and, you very might well have a booking the next day, but you might not, right? And that's okay, especially when you're trying to find the right person. But yeah, I think getting on there, making your listing really shine and getting to become familiar with that process. And then you can work to hone in your pricing as well.
Absolutely. Well, Katie, this has been a pleasure chatting with you today. I want to give you one little extra bit of time so you can say anything you want to about Furnish Finder. I cannot wait to go back and talk to some of my customers about it. I've got some that are in the MTR strategy. I want to make sure that they're doing it the right way. So any other things that you've got to add for us?
Yeah, I think I would just encourage everybody to try it. It's a low barrier to entry. It's $179 to list your property for an entire year. We don't take those booking fees. We don't take that commission. And you're going to get so much exposure and you're going to get so much opportunity from it. For those who are maybe like burnt out after high season, right? And you want to take your low season and you just want that stability. Or you have a gap, right? Or maybe you're ready for some time to try this out and see how it can work for you, where you don't have the turnovers and you have that consistent income. You're going to be relieved. I've seen so many really savvy investors who take, that hybrid approach, and they take the short term during the high season and then they flip to midterm, gives themselves a little bit of a break, but they enjoy the consistent revenue of midterm in the off season. I mean, for me, that's like a pair that's really, really hard to beat. And it lets you do some deferred maintenance. It lets you take care of your property and take care of yourself a little bit too, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's kind of like, it's like the best of both worlds. Like you're maximizing your revenue. You're also maximizing your occupancy, and you're kind of squeezing your property for all the juice that it's worth. So it's a pretty easy switch, and I would just encourage people to give it a try, because you might just be surprised with how much you'll really benefit from it.
And we didn't talk about this, and I did want you to end it, so I'm gonna come back and let you end it.
Yeah.
But as you were talking, I was thinking about something I'm working on the side as well. And there's a lot going on in 2026 in some major cities in the United States when it comes to the World Cup. And I would love to hear your opinion on what you think Furnish Finder can, what it can bring to the table with these people that may be saying, hey, I've got a property. I'm not necessarily renting it now, but maybe I do decide to go and rent it and take a leave of absence from, Kansas City or New York City for 2 months. Do you think there's an opportunity on Furnish Finder for those?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's going to that's not like a one night thing, right? People are coming in for a while.
Yep.
Absolutely. The furnishing and the prep work for a midterm rental is so different than a short-term rental. You just need the basics.
Yep.
We have a lot of people who say, hey, I'm going to be traveling for the summer, or a traveling healthcare professional who's going on contract, and rather than leave their place sitting empty and they still have to pay rent or their mortgage every month, they rent it out, and it's an easy switch. Right. Yep. So definitely encourage people, and you're going to be ahead of the game by looking at an event like that, which is unique, where it's multiple weeks and multiple, it's a longer stint, by looking at it through the midterm lens, because it's going to be expensive for travelers, and they're going to be really conscious about fees and things like that, where they're going to want to be cost conscious, but still willing to invest in a place to stay. And they're going to be looking at places like Furnished Finder. I can guarantee you, where the price they see is reasonable, and you're going to get 100% of that. So I would absolutely encourage that. Room rentals are also a huge thing. I mean, we have 60,000 room rentals, right? You can rent out by the room, even if you're still living there. People are looking and getting very creative with their housing options in this market.
Absolutely. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you on the podcast again eventually. If you have any questions, do you want to give your reach out information, or do you have any direct contact information for Furnish Finder?
Yeah, you can always reach out to on our socials, Instagram and Facebook. We also have a really great Facebook group. If you search Furnish Finder and find the group, we have about 150,000 members. We're in there answering questions all day, and you might be able to hear some answers from other users as well for different perspectives, but definitely reach out and get in touch.
That's awesome. Community is one of the best things ever. So it's great to hear that you've got plenty of people that you can talk to. Katie, again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.